This is the other hurdle, isn't it? So now you know someone has got a mental health problem. Maybe you know you have got a mental health problem. Maybe now you know enough that you've seen the signs that there's treatments for it. And you also know that if you call up to get an appointment, you can get an appointment. What's the hurdle? This is that second hurdle. This is work done by one of our partners, the National Council of Social Service. Anyone here from NCSS? A very strong partner in our society and our community that tries to work with non-governmental VWOs to support our community. Okay, they also face this problem. They have set out a lot of VWOs in Singapore to provide mental health support and services, and then people don't come. So why? So they asked people. So there you are. This is the findings. That 1/3 of respondents, when they asked people their attitudes about people with mental illness, so they did a survey and they talked to someone. Do you know someone with a mental illness? What do you think about that person's condition? Well, 1/3 said that first of all, they lack knowledge and awareness about persons with mental health illness, particularly in the area of employment, recovery, and treatment. So they don't know anything. I don't want to say I don't know, okay? But those that did try to express an opinion, this is also very worrying because 50% of them felt that PMHIs, persons with mental health issues, have a lack of self-discipline, willpower, are unreliable, or are different from other people. This is very sobering news, and it's false. It's fake news. But 50% of people believe that. This is what a view is that translates into a stigma, which results in discrimination. Okay? Less than 50% were willing to work with, let alone live nearby or live with a person with mental health problems. Now, how is that possible, right? Because if you say 1 in 7 adult Singaporeans is going to have a mental health problem in their life, and you cannot live, work, or stay near someone with one, where are we all going to stay? Not on this island. This is Singapore. These are people who are our neighbors and our friends and our family members. And we have these ideas and these fake ideas about them. So this is what I need you all to understand, this information that you must, I hope you will bring home with you and that you will do something about it. There are two types of social media. Well, social media and there's the mainstream media. And I'm going to show you a couple of slides that suggest that actually there's a role to any media people here. There are stories. Okay, not everyone is created by media people. In fact, some of these stories are created by us, people like us who know that lack of literacy and then also have this stigmatizing attitude. And we write such stories, you know. And the reality is that there are many stories that suggest that people with mental health illness are somehow frightening and dangerous and need to be avoided, and they cause a lot of problems. And so these are stories that are still out there. So think about social media, and after these two things I've talked to you about, think about what you're putting and posting on your Instagram and your Facebook and what you're writing about, okay? You have the power to influence, and please help us. Now, I asked about healthcare workers, right? Because this is a study we did on ourselves. IMH actually said, oh, we talk about stigma, and we're wondering, this is a bad problem in Singapore. What is it like in Institute of Mental Health? And we are the first study to explore what we call associative stigma amongst mental health professionals. So, can I have a show of hands? How many of us are mental health professionals? Have you experienced stigma because you are mental health professionals? Well, this is what we found. Associative stigma means just because you are associated with mental health, that means somehow the stigma is about you as well. And we have 50%, if you add up, so no is 48.7%. 50% is moderate or high, okay? 10% of us, my colleagues, experience high level of associated stigma. So what is associated stigma? I've got some of my colleagues here, but I'll tell you some of the stories that when I first started working in mental health, when you tell someone you're working in IMH, what do? They look at you funny, okay, and then if sometimes they laugh, and many times people say, after a while, do you get like that also? And this is very common. Many of my colleagues, and I face this as well when my car's in the workshop and I take a taxi to work. So you say IMH, then the taxi driver will just adjust the thing. Turn the camera to inside, not looking outside. I take my hat off to my nurses and those of you in the nursing profession because they are the ones who are more likely to experience moderate or high. For some reason, we all work and live with and journey alongside people with mental illness, but it seems that the doctors are a little bit less spared. How come your brain's so strong you don't have mental illness? I don't understand. So there's this strange thinking that we have, But these are these thoughts that have a very serious impact because they have a role in playing up to those first two barriers for people to get help. Okay, that literacy issue because you got the wrong fake information, and then the second one is the bad attitude that you have about this idea. So I think these are just two ideas that came up very strongly for our staff. So people react negatively when they know that we are working in a mental health setting, and people make jokes. Okay? I hope that when you meet one of my colleagues, you can say, oh, you're working in IMH. I'm glad to know you. I'm very proud of the work you're doing. Thank you. No need to say that to me, but I would like you to say that to my colleagues. And actually, any one of you. So in fact, this extends a little bit beyond, because basically when we ask, that slide I showed you how we trained 20% of people with mental problems go and see a GP. We started this GP partnership program almost 15 years ago, and we asked GPs, primary care doctors, would you like to treat mental health in your clinic? The initial interest was really low. Many reasons, okay? No time, I'm not sure whether people can pay, another stigmatizing attitude, the person with a mental illness will cause problem in my clinic. But I suspect they also didn't want to be known as the doctor that sees the person with mental illness. That is the associative stigma, right? It has improved, but there's so much more we can do. There's one slide which I didn't put up actually. It's about self-stigma. Persons with mental health issues experience, so this is associative stigma. We feel as professionals, people stigmatize us. There's a huge self-stigma that persons with mental health problems experience. Self-stigma is attributing to yourself, because of your condition, a lot of negative attributes. So in as much as we said people who think that people have mental health problems don't try very hard or they have a lack of self-discipline, actually people with mental health problems also think that about themselves. And this is the hardest. And it's about that think about, you said metacognition, right? It's thinking about yourself. So I know this about myself and I think this about myself and this is the way I feel about it. And that self-stigma is the toughest of all the barriers because if everyone says, oh, you work in IMH, then you must be quite funny after a while. And I say, no, sorry, that's not a nice thing to say. I'm not like that, okay? That means I don't stigmatize myself. But if many people keep telling me this, or I keep reading this, after a while, I start to think, maybe, I'm not sure, and yeah, and it's how toxic, right, these thoughts can affect us. And that's what happens to persons with mental health problems. So they cannot recognize it for a long time, and when they start to recognize that I do have a problem and maybe I should get help, then all these thoughts about, oh, I must have done something wrong, that's why I got this, I didn't try hard enough, I deserve this in some way. And I'm not the same as other people. I will never be able to recover. I will never be able to do things that other people can do. And that's self-stigma. So for those of you, those of us who have experienced the mental health problems in our lives, please think about the hurt that you're causing yourself inadvertently by self-stigma and challenge yourself a little bit.